a lot of their failings caused me to, I also miss out on the first year of my son's life because I can't actually remember.
Yeah.
And over the last, I think, 10 years, there's been several investigations. There's been 748 recommendations made,
Um,
and not a single change has happened.
Some weeks ago on Sky News, there was a group of women who were talking about birth trauma, and they were talking about the really awful treatment they'd had at the hands of the NHS and how this has affected their lives and their children and their husbands have suffered. So being interested in birth trauma myself, I invited one of them onto the show to talk about her experience. So today I'm very grateful to be joined by Rachel Coles. Rachel suffered a really traumatic birth 4.5 years ago when her son was born, and she suffered for a year or so after with PTSD, with depression. It really took its toll on her and her husband. But she's turned it around, she's become a campaigner for better health services. So I'm very grateful today that Rachel has come on to share her story with me. So, welcome to People in Politics. Rachel, it's lovely to meet you. And thank you very much for coming on to the show to do this.
That's absolutely fine. I'm really glad you asked me because it is such an important topic we're about to discuss. So thank you for having me.
No, not at all. It's a pleasure. I suppose to start with, I thought it'd be good for the viewer to sort of say how you and I came into contact because I saw you on Sky News, what, a month ago now with there's about 6 women and so maybe you can begin by telling us how that came about and how you got to be there.
Yeah, so I had a very traumatic birth with my son. So my son is now 4.5 years old and is absolutely amazing. But the journey to getting him earthside was not easy at all.
Mm.
So I was on Sky. I'm a campaigner, so I work in marketing, run a marketing business, but on the side, I'm a campaigner, and it's so
Okay.
important to me. So my story stems from the fact that my whole maternity care was pretty shocking. Um, the typical things that people say, like you weren't listened to, there's no continuity of care, and you're almost just dismissed as a woman when you are raising these concerns. And I raised
Mm.
quite a few concerns in pregnancy. I was having problems with I had anemia, so that got diagnosed about at 24 weeks. Um, and then it just felt like it's problem after problem. I had like prodromal labor, which means that my body was contracting consistently for the 4 weeks
Mm.
before I actually gave birth to my son. So I had a whole
Mm.
month of actual contractions, not just Braxton Hicks, full on contractions. um, I ended up going into spontaneous labor after I was about, he was probably overdue by a week. My waters broke naturally and I went into spontaneous labour, had to go into the hospital just so that they could check my waters had broken, which I could definitely confirm to them my waters had broken. And then they gave me this 24-hour window. So they say that if your waters break, it's better, safer to get the baby out within 24 hours, purely based on the fact that there's a risk of infection if they're in too long
Right.
without the water. So I'd started contracting. They'd sent me home and I was contracting, but I wasn't. my labour wasn't progressing. So it was very slow. I was about 2 centimetres dilated and kind of staying that way. So I had to go back into hospital to get induced so that they could speed up and progress their labour, using what is called the Pitocin drip. So it's a synthetic hormone that mimics the hormone that obviously oxytocin, which you need to be able to dilate as quickly as you can. Um, they'd left me on that for too long. So the recommended time that you should be on it is between 8 to 12 hours. I was on it for about 14 hours and on a
Wow.
high dose of it as well, because my cervix just didn't want to dilate. It just, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, it didn't want to help me get him out. Um, which now, if you meet my son, you understand like that's where the stubbornness comes from because it kind of started
Yeah.
there. Um, but
Mhm.
because they'd left me on it too long, it caused me to have a postpartum hemorrhage after he was
I,
born. So he was delivered absolutely fine. But when they gave me an injection to try get the placenta to come out, it had actually, there's stuff to say that I probably had a problem with my placenta anyway, and it may have been
mhm.
stuck to the wall because of the, it like pulled away a lot of tissue and left a huge tear in my uterus. So there's a lot to say that there was probably an issue there that wasn't picked up, but
Right.
not helped by the fact that I was on this drip for so long and having to contract for so long. So I had a huge postpartum hemorrhage and lost 4 litres of blood. I had to have blood transfusions. They were concerned that they couldn't stop the bleeding in theatre and they couldn't give me a specific drug to stop the bleeding that they would
Mhm.
typically provide because my body could have, like, there was a very high chance of me going into cardiac arrest on the table if they'd given me that
Right.
drug. So I was very lucky that one of the doctors in the theatre took complete control, stopped them from doing a hysterectomy, which would have been last resort. Eventually, they managed to stop the bleeding. Um, and then I think the most horrific part of it is I came out of that theatre. They told me they'd removed all my placenta manually. And then 4 weeks later, at home, I'm lying in bed, 1 a.m. in the morning, and I suddenly feel this gush. And I was like, what is going on? Pulled back my bed sheets, and the bed was covered in blood. So I lost about
Oh, God.
blood at home. See no
Oh,
medical assistance nearby. Was straight on the phone to the doctors, like, what do I do? There is blood like coming out of me now. And I actually had a secondary hemorrhage there, which is a hemorrhage that's up to 6 weeks after the birth of your child. And in my case, it was caused by retained placenta. So when they'd
oh,
manually removed all my placenta, they had actually
right.
left placenta in, causing me to then have a secondary hemorrhage. So I campaign nowadays because of the impact it had on my mental health. The fact that a lot of their failings caused me to, I always say I miss out on the first year of my son's life because I can't actually remember.
Yeah.
Like it was so traumatic. Just I was just trying
Yeah.
to survive that first year.
Uh, I was I was about to say, yeah, you talk about articulately about the story now, but I'm sure it was phenomenally traumatic, and so can you give us a feel of the sort of personal toll it took on you and I'm sure your husband and the
Yeah.
rest of the family.
So I think the actual, like being in theatre, the first hemorrhage, I don't really know what happened because I was so out of it. I knew I was bleeding, but I was in and out of consciousness. That affected my husband way more because he saw it. He saw the blood loss, and then he was left in the room um, with all my blood. Was I when I was rushed to theatre, he was left there for 2 hours by himself. They
Oh,
hadn't
God.
told him what was happening. They hadn't told him where to go. He was like, what do I do? I can't just walk around the labour room
Yeah.
and find someone because they're all busy. So he was left in the room by himself. Um, the secondary hemorrhage is, I think, what caused my PTSD. because I then saw the blood. And the long-lasting trauma around that is I'm a woman. Every month I bleed. That's
Mhm.
like nature and biology. And my issue is that blood loss is a hugely triggering thing for me now. So I feel
Right.
triggered every now and then when I'm due on because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to see blood again. So it's almost a lifelong thing. You try and separate the fact that, the blood loss with a hemorrhage is genuinely dangerous. It could kill you. But trying to separate that from just your standard loss is quite
Yeah.
hard. Um, and the trauma itself, like I've had a lot of therapy. So I can
Right.
talk about it now so easily because I've had so much therapy around this.
Yeah.
I did have to pay for my therapy out of my own pocket because the
Yeah.
NHS could provide the type of therapy I needed as quickly as I needed it. Um, so I've spent a fortune on that. Um,
Yeah.
very lucky.
That's there. And that's therapy for you. I've spent a phenomenal amount of therapy over
Yeah,
the years. It's very expensive and very hard to get
yeah.
through the health service at the right time. Which,
Exceptionally hard. And I remember
so,
actually when I went to my GP about it, they said to me, they were like, "We can tell you're very suicidal." And I was like, "Yeah, like I have depression and anxiety and PTSD. Like I every day
uh,
it's just hard." And they went, "We need you to pick between depression or anxiety so we can help you." And I was like, "You need me to pick?" Like,
and
you want me to pick? Oh, the
for
depression.
what reason?
It was
Yeah.
how do you
That's,
pick between these two things? They're both completely debilitating.
yeah. Important difference does it make anyway? If you need therapy, you need therapy. It shouldn't matter if it's for PTSD or depression. Everything's tied up in the same in the same thing, I should say. Uh, so from the birth of your son, how long was it? Before you kind of got well again and got able to talk about it without so much trauma. And, it must have really taken its toll for
I
a
would,
long time.
yeah, about the first year, like I was saying, I can't remember it. So I know that I was in an awful state for that first year, just trying to survive. The second year is when I remember my husband turning to me and saying, "You need to get help and you need to get help now." He was like,
Yeah.
not right. You need to go get some medical support." So we did towards that. My son had just turned 1, and I did go and seek help then. And it probably took about a year of having the support in place, so having my private
Yeah.
therapist, having the medication I needed to take, to finally feel like I was getting better. I still hadn't dealt with it though. It was still very much, I was better mentally, but I was better knowing that I could block that out and it didn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it was when the birth trauma inquiry report landed, and I sat there and I read it, and I saw myself in that, and I saw all these
Wow.
stories, and I was like, something just changed in me that day, because I was like,
Yeah.
I've got a big voice, like I can talk, and I'm very intelligent, so I know how to play the cards here. I come from a media background, so I
Yeah.
know I can use my voice to help women. And it just like something completely switched in me that day when I read that.
Wow.
I was like, I'm going to now make a difference because my story is the story of so many other women.
Yeah.
It
Of
just gave me
course.
a drive. Like
Yeah.
it was very powerful realizing.
Yeah. Yeah, it must have been. And just coming back a little bit, you mentioned your husband, and the way that he was treated during the birth, must have been really, really traumatic for him. And I wonder if he was offered help or support or anything like that? Or do you think, people forget that the husband's there as well? It's their trauma as well.
Yeah, so he's never been offered anything. What we've noticed is about a year ago, we were having that discussion, like, do we have another? Do we not? Do we extend the family? Because we've always thought, oh, let's have two children. And that's when he really opened up to me and said, I don't think you realize that I had to watch you almost die. And he's like, I just can't do
Yeah,
it again. And I think that's the point when I realized he's been carrying this in silence for a long time because he's been trying to make sure I'm safe and I'm getting better. And just the fact that
yeah,
he didn't open up about that. I know he
that's
was talking to his
amazing.
parents about it, but he didn't have the friends or the resources to go to really open up about it.
Yeah. I've not told anybody this before, and I feel a bit awkward about telling it online. But of course, I think that my cerebral palsy that result of trauma, and I was uh, the, I was 52 when my dad died, and over the years I never ever had a conversation with my dad about my birth because whatever he'd done to cope with it and to bury it and put it away, he'd done in 1970, whatever, and it just wasn't coming out again. So it was like it was so it was so dramatic for him that even 50 years later he couldn't talk about what happened.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of men find that they find it's taboo to open up and say,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
experienced this trauma as well. I look at my husband, I'm like, he wasn't the one who had to give birth, so but he was the one who had
yeah. That's
that.
right. People forget,
He saw a lot more than me. I think a lot of people forget, like when you're in that delivery room, you can't see down there anyway, so you don't know what's happening. You're kind of out of it as well as the woman. But the men have to sit there and witness it. And they want to advocate for you, but they don't know how to advocate for you. And the midwives kind of make that difficult as well. So it is really hard for them.
yeah, that's it. But like I said, my dad probably knew more about it than mum. But, and I said, because my mum was so after it at the time as well.
Yeah.
But he obviously didn't get the support. And of course, it was a different era in the 1970s. But all the same issues got help, and it just shows that these precious moments affect your whole life, the rest of your life.
So
And
much. Yeah.
yeah, and people don't appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think what's really sad as well is that your parents experienced this. Like my parents, my husband's parents experienced this, and then
Yeah,
I'm experiencing it, and I'm another generation on. And it's like, why are these same problems not being dealt with?
no, that's right. Yeah, and so how did you start campaigning? You said that something flicked in you, and it's all right. I have to do something. So, so what did you do with that feeling and that information?
Yeah, so I think because I come from a media background, like yourself,
Yeah.
I kind of know how to play the media to get heard. So it does help. So I knew straight away I've got a story to share here, and I started approaching the news outlets that I knew would publish this story. So I approached places like Metro and BBC, and just
Right.
because I was like, this happened to me. I can see you're reported on this. This is my story. And it started getting published. And then I started approaching some charities as well to see if I could offer support to other women. A lot of the birthing charities do something called peer supporter. So
Mm-hmm.
volunteer your time and obviously help speak to women on the phone or via email or WhatsApp, just to let them know, like, I've been through this, these are some good resources that can guide you, like, I'm here as a friendly face. So I got heavily involved with the Birth Trauma Association. And with that, um, I just realized that there was so much more campaigning I could do. So I
Wow.
helped them with their social media for a long time. I think it helps. I come from a social media background, so I was like, I can really help here. I can help
Great.
get the statistics really out there, show people
Yeah.
like the reality of the situation. Um, and then I've just kept going. So I've joined other organizations where again I've helped them amplify their voices, their research. I'm currently about to start working on another campaign, but it's very NDA kind of style right now, so I can't go into more detail with that. But
That's
that is
fine.
very exciting. Again, it's
That's great.
sharing stories and lived experience. Um, and yeah, the only thing that I haven't managed to do so far, and I don't know why, because they have had thousands of emails, is set up a meeting with our health secretary. So that is my end goal.
Oh,
I've emailed several times. I've had the
the the
emails.
the health secretary. So we said you've emailed the
Yeah.
health
So
secretary. So,
yeah, so I've approached him. Baroness Amos is doing investigation into maternity right now, reached out to her office. Just because they need to hear from us women. They can't
yeah.
sit there, they've sent out a call for evidence, but that's just a form. And I don't think stories should be in a tick box and a tiny little character.
No.
I think you need to actually sit there and listen to the stories, listen to the woman, listen to the shaky voice when they tell you what the actual problem is, like how this has impacted them.
Yeah.
That's more powerful than sitting there and reading words on a piece of paper. So,
So it sounds like this, this issue of, women being not taken seriously and not being heard, not, being, you yeah, being brushed off during pregnancy. It sounds like it's not a new thing. It's been going on for a very long time, and it's been neglected by various governments and various health secretaries. But do you feel it's beginning to come to the fore now, thanks to people like yourself?
it's a really hard one because they're doing this investigation. And I have my thoughts on that. They've done countless, like so many governments have done investigations into maternity
Yeah.
care. And over the last, I think, 10 years, there's been several investigations. There's been 748 recommendations made,
Um,
and not a single change has happened. And my issue is we're doing yet another investigation or review, and you're just finding the same stuff. So we know what
yeah.
they are. We know that it's systemic issues within the NHS. We know that
Yeah.
they're rushing to induce women. We know that C-section rates are rising. We know that there's racial inequalities in maternity care. There's a postcode lottery. These things have all been documented many times before. And my concern with the Labour government right now is that it's always, why are you doing another investigation? They come up with their reasons. But it's
Yeah.
any
Everything's just an investigation. Well,
and
an investigation.
there's been a delay on it anyway. So they were supposed to have the interim findings and the mid-piece report actually released way like long time ago. And it's now, oh, it's coming at, I think it's actually coming at the end of February. Um,
Yeah.
but you're like, you were supposed to release that in December. Like
Yeah.
you say, I was listening to an interview with Wes Streeton a while back, and he said they've invested £121 million into maternity care. Well, I know friends who are going through the maternity services right now. They're not being listened to. There's shortage of
Uh,
staff. where is this money going? Because it's definitely not going to improve the services.
Yeah.
So I just have concerns that this is just going to be another investigation, another report gets written up, and it gets filed in the stuff we'll deal with another day, or
Yeah.
another government can sort it out. So I do have my concerns. And it's not an
Yeah.
Labour concern. It's a why is every single government not seeing this as a priority?
No, because you think Pokemon more is more important than maternity care
Yeah.
of people giving birth to to babies and why do you think they brush it aside or why do they think they ignore it so much?
Yeah, and I always think, why are you ignoring it? Because maternity,
Yeah.
you're bringing in that situation, it's not just about one person's care. There's like a whole other life you need to care for in that situation.
Hmm.
And it should have way more funding put into it, way more investment,
Yeah.
way more trauma-informed care, like all these things that would really make a huge difference. And I think if people saw it as maternity care isn't just about one person, it's about two and sometimes three,
Yeah.
depending on how many kids you're having. I think people's views on it would change because you're trying to save two lives if something goes wrong. You're
Of
not.
course. Of course. And the implication on people's lives is enormous. It's hard to measure that or not.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
because when it goes wrong, the 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 implications are lifelike. I mean, huge. Incalculable. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's things you have to live with. Like, for example, even our discussion about having another child, it just comes with
yeah,
so much more of a
of
cloud over.
course.
Like,
Yeah.
do you do in that
Yeah.
instance? Because
Yeah.
if we have another, we're going into an unsafe system, and I
Yeah.
could die, and I've now got my child I need to be alive for.
Of
So
course.
all these things that you think about, and it is
Oh,
like completely lifelong.
so are you now part of a kind of group or pressure group or something? And do you have a sort of list of points that you would like implemented
Yeah.
broadly?
Yeah, so the campaign I'm working on that I can't really talk about, we do have things that we want the government to do. So listening to women and letting women voice their concerns. If they have a concern that something is wrong with their body, they probably know because it's their body. It's not yours.
Yeah.
Um, Continuity of care, just so important. If women can see the same midwife team, the same doctor, or
Yeah.
obstetrician, these are things that really matter because that person will get to know the woman, get to know if they're having any mental health problems, what their health is like, get to know the family dynamic. You'll just get to know, have a much smoother journey through the
Yeah, of course.
this. And then there's the systemic things as well. So the language that is used does need to be changed. I think things like saying that women have a incompetent cervix, as I was told, that's not helpful for a woman who's in labour to be told your cervix is incompetent and it's all your fault. It's
Yeah.
actually the fault doesn't really lie with me. It's more
No.
not wanting to work. Like I can't help that. So I think there's language changes that need to be used. And then I think trauma-informed care as well. I think if midwives actually sat in a room with mothers like me who experienced the worst, they would change the way that they deliver care and
Yeah.
the way that they support. And there's so much that needs to be done. I think mental health as well, postnatally, like we
Yeah.
need, like, I think if midwives had realized that my mental health was bad in the checkups, and they'd ask me questions to guide me to almost let me go, actually, yeah, I'm really struggling, that would have
Yeah.
saved me a lot of trauma and a lot of memories that I just won't get back. So
yeah,
that aftercare is so important as well. Like ask the woman,
yeah,
okay, and don't ask it in a, are you all right? You know, how have you been feeling? It's okay
yeah,
if you are sad, but we need to help.
yeah, sure.
So get that fear almost taken away from them. I know in my case, I thought, oh my God, if I tell them I want to kill myself, they're going to take my child off me. And you like
Uh,
spiral, but actually make it clear that that's not what happens. They're looking out for you and they want you to
no,
be
yeah,
happy.
sure. Mm, yeah. And as the one thing in particular that you'd telehealth that they could do now, without much cost to them, that they can do right now to improve services for women.
Well, they need more staff. So I think getting more staff into maternity care is going to make a huge improvement straight away because then it
Yeah.
has the ripple effect of you can have the continuity of care and stuff like that because you've got the staff available to do that. Um, but it's a really hard one because I don't think many people want to enter the NHS's workplace right now because of the culture.
No,
And
no,
I do want to say as well, there are like any midwives or doctors listening to this. My anger is not with them because they do
no.
an amazing job. They do an impossible job. And it's a job that I wouldn't want to do. I'm so glad that they do what they do. But the NHS itself is completely failing. And I actually think they should be
Yeah.
looking at the government and say, why are you letting us down? Because it's not them, it's the
No.
government's
It's the
lack of.
government. And it's success of the governments because the NHS is on its knees and really is. And I don't know how they change that. How they get more staff. They need some more staff from overseas. And it's a really complicated problem to solve. And many, many health secretaries have come and gone and not address the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was going to ask if you have hope for the future. Do you have hope that it will change and people will get better
I think
maternity services?
I do think, and I don't think it's going to be instant, but I would like to think, and my hope is that by the time my son and his future wife are planning on having children, that maternity care is safer. That gives three governments to sort this out.
Point. Yeah, yeah. Should be
So,
plenty time.
yeah,
Should
they've
be
got plenty
plenty.
of time to sort it out to fulfill my
Good,
wish there. But I do think that I think change is coming, and I think it's
good.
coming because more of us aren't afraid to speak out. And I think people
Yeah,
realize, like, when women get angry about this, like, we are going to speak and we are going to
yeah,
look at the actual
yeah,
factor. Like, you are
yeah.
failing us, and that's not good.
Nah, not
So
good.
I see change coming. I just see it very slow. And that's the bit
Yeah,
that irritates me because how many more women are going to be affected in this time where this change needs to happen? That's just,
yeah, yeah. And how old is your son now, and how's he doing?
he's 4.5 now, and
Uh-huh.
he's your typical 4.5-year-old, just absolutely crazy.
Ah,
Um, he's a very brainy little boy. He knows
yeah,
he wrapped around his little finger, and he probably
yeah,
knows that. But the questions for him, I think the hardest bit is the questions that come as to why he doesn't have a brother or sister. And then you have to try and explain it to a 4.5-year-old, and it's just like,
that's it. Yeah, that's difficult. Need to wait a while before you understand that one, So by saying that, it sounds like you've decided not to
yeah,
have more children for a reason you said earlier, which I can fully understand and fully appreciate it, but it must be difficult. Must be a
Yeah.
difficult one to swallow
It
if that's what you've always wanted.
it was like a grieving process almost. I
Yeah.
went through a complete grief where I realized that it was almost taken away from me, that decision, because I couldn't just go and say, oh, well, let's just try again. It comes with so much more thought to it. But yeah, we
Yeah.
decided we're not going to have another. I finally, it's taken a long time, come to accept that. But I definitely grieve the fact that the life I pictured is just not going to happen. Um,
No.
and yeah, it's quite sad because you see it a lot. I think a, the stats kind of show that if a woman has a traumatic birth, I think it's like 54% won't go on to have another because
But that's high.
it's too much or the
Yeah.
concern is too high. So
Yeah.
it's quite sad. But I know I'm not alone. I think I found a really good community.
No.
So
I'm I'm the youngest of two. I have an older brother, and to the best of my knowledge, I think my mum wanted more children, but she stopped after me, and it's just the same thing. But she'd already had my my older brother. But I have to say, having a sibling is not always great, believe me.
I've got a brother and sister. It was quite hard growing up, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I did being a single child myself, not so bad, you
I
know.
always say to him now when he asks, I'm like, you get more presents, so it's fine.
That's right. Yeah. And, anyway, Rachel, I'm so grateful for you taking the time to do this this afternoon. It's so lovely to meet you and hear your story. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me use my voice. So yeah,
Uh,
thank you.
no, at all. That's exactly what I would like to do in my so, um with my channel going forward, my tiny platform so far. But I really love hearing personal stories and how we're all affected by politics every day and people's lives are changed by them. So I think it's a very important thing to talk about. So thank you.
That's all right.